Good evening, everybody. It is 6:02 p.m. on the 10th of November, 2022, the regularly scheduled meeting of the Somerville Planning Board. I am Mike Capuano. I'm the chair of the Planning Board. With me tonight is our clerk, Erin Gino, Jahan Habib, and Debbie Howard Easton. We have a number of items on our agenda tonight. But first, pursuant to Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, this meeting of the Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation. A recording of these proceedings can be accessed at any time using the registration link at the top of the agenda. This meeting is being recorded. The items that we have on our agenda tonight are 2 sets of meeting minutes and 3 items on the public hearing list, all of which have been previously opened, and some have been heard and discussed, and one has just sought a series of continuances, as this applicant has done again this evening. So that applicant is 59 Bow Street, which has previously been opened. The applicant has requested a continuance to which meeting, Risa? Is it 12/1?
This is Risa speaking. Yes, December 1st.
Okay. The applicant has requested a continuance to December 1st, 2022. The chair moves to continue that agenda item to the 1st, seconded by Jahan. Chair votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Erin votes aye.
Debbie votes aye.
Okay, that agenda item is continued unanimously. The other items on our agenda are 153 South Street, which has previously been opened and heard and testimony has been taken. And the other project, the other applicant application is 2, 8, and 29 Harding Street, which similarly has been opened, heard, and testimony has been taken. So I'd like to take the meeting minutes first. Has everybody had the opportunity to review the meeting minutes of August 4th? And if so, does anybody have any comments, questions, or suggested revisions to those meeting minutes? No? Seeing none, the chair moves to adopt the draft meeting minutes as the meeting minutes of the board, seconded by Erin. Chair votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Erin votes aye.
Debbie votes aye.
We have some meeting minutes. The next is the August 18th, 2022 meeting. Has everybody had an opportunity to review those draft minutes? Does anybody have any comments, questions, suggested revisions to those draft minutes? Yes, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for the meeting minutes for the 18th, on page 1, I believe it's the 4th paragraph down, the one that starts with member. I think my last name, there's a small typo there. Instead of J, it should be an H.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Is there anything else that you'd like to address in those set of draft minutes? Okay. Then in that case, the chair moves to adopt as revised the meeting minutes for August 18th, 2022, seconded by Jahan. Chair votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Erin votes aye.
Debbie votes aye.
We have meeting minutes for the 18th. I would like to invite the applicant for 153 South Street to please be unmuted and have a discussion with members of the board.
This is Risa speaking. At this time, I see Rola Idris's hands raised and Ian Rami. I'm going to unmute you both. Please let me know who will be the presenter for tonight. Rola, you have been unmuted.
Hi, Risa. This is Rola with Legge McCall Properties. Ian should be presenting tonight, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Risa speaking. Ian, now you should be a presenter and be able to share your screen.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Can everybody hear me and see the screen?
We can. So as we know, there is an amended supplemental staff memorandum on this application that addresses some of the questions and concerns that staff had, as did members of the planning board. So I'm hoping that you might be able to address, if necessary at all, the changes that were made in the supplemental memorandum, because we've all heard the original application and had discussion and testimony on it.
Sure. For the record, Ian Ramey with Copley Wolf Design Group. It's good to be with you this evening. We met 2 weeks ago and presented the thoroughfare, as you noted, had a very good conversation. There were a few items that we were asked to come back and present to you. Here's a quick look at our agenda. We'll go over the process really quickly. And then items 2 through 6 really have to do with these outstanding items that we were asked to address. The first of which was the neighborhood meeting comment summary, which we can share with you. Item 3, the best management practices for the paving patterns on the street. Item 4, the light spill reduction strategies. Item 5 is the sidewalk depths. And then item 6 is the land transfer to the city. So we realized at our last meeting that while Councilor Scott did speak to the previous neighborhood meetings, we didn't really summarize the outcome of those sessions that we had. We really had 4 comments that were sort of the primary takeaways through that community outreach process. The first of which was the reduction of total parking spaces on the thoroughfare. We originally had approximately 30 spaces and heard through our conversations with the community that there was a desire to reduce the amount of parking. And now we have a plan that shows 23 total spaces, 3 of which are the accessible spaces. The second thing that we heard was the idea about extending or wrapping thoroughfare 1 around the corner onto Harding Street. We previously had shown the thoroughfare kind of terminating at Civic Space 2, and we have a diagram to show you that. The reason for that extension and wrapping around the corner was really to sort of curb and prevent excessive vehicular travel from cars driving along westward along Ward Street and having the ability to turn onto the thoroughfare by turning the flush pedestrian condition around the corner. That really helped to kind of deter that traffic. The third comment we had was to show accessible parking spaces, which was a good comment. We didn't have that in the previous original plans, and so now we have that. And then lastly, we were asked to study the material treatment at crossing locations, which produced our strategy of having the tactile warning pavers throughout. From our meeting last week, we had some conversation about the decorative nature of the paving pattern and how that could potentially affect or maybe confuse the drivers on the street. So we went back and coordinated with our traffic consultants and made reference to some of the design guidelines that are out there, and really found a few key statements relative to the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, or MUTCD, which really says that there is a lot of latitude in the pavement treatments for these types of applications, provided that they don't conflict with the sort of traditional roadway striping, the yellow and white striping, which we do not have on this application. This is more of a decorative pattern, so there should be no conflict there. The other thing that we were directed to is the NACDO guidance, which does encourage the use of the decorative paving for commercial shared streets, really to sort of break down the scale of the street and make it feel, again, much more pedestrianized. And then I think we just wanted to sort of reiterate the fact that the pavement treatment, really the goal here is to calm and slow the traffic, to prioritize the travel zone for pedestrians and cyclists. And the idea here is that it's a very slow street. So thoroughfare 1 is designed to be a 10-mile-per-hour or less street, really considering that low speed. We don't think that the proposed decorative pavements will significantly detract or disorient the automobile users. And again, here's a diagram of our current preferred plan. Again, you know, the next step for us is to really get into the weeds, so to speak, with the engineering department in terms of the materials and the pavement cross sections and all that, to ensure that all the safety standards are being met.
And that is something that you would work with the engineering department on. That's, certainly something that's generically part of the conditions, is that you'll work with all the relevant city departments to make sure they get sign off.
That's right. The next comment that we had was more of a concern really about how we were dealing with the light at sort of the sensitive adjacency. So specifically where we have building 6, which is that residential building, there was a good comment about how do we control that light so that the street lights aren't affecting the residential units in those buildings. So again, our proposed fixtures are going to be the city standard street lights. We have 2 conditions. The one on the left is that kind of pendant arm, which is at the bigger intersections, and the more post-top condition is the standard that kind of happens between those larger intersections. And so our strategy, as I think we alluded to in the last session, was that we're going to utilize lamp fixtures that have asymmetrical distribution, meaning that they throw the light in specific directions, namely sort of forward into the sides, and not just sort of universally casting light everywhere. So that really kind of controls where the light goes and makes a much more efficient lighting strategy. The other thing that we plan to do where we are really close to buildings or in areas where we really want to control that light cutoff is to use house side shields, which will really sort of have full cutoff on the horizontal on the back side of that fixture. So we think with these 2 measures, we can really kind of control where that light goes and just get it to the areas where it needs to be for safety. Another comment that we had, or question really, was just clarifying the width of the pedestrian sidewalks. So our minimum standard is that we have to have at least a 6-foot wide concrete accessible route. That's the standard that we need to have throughout all the thoroughfare public ways. And so what's shown here is just a diagram that kind of gives us the different conditions of walking. There's a lot of colors here, and it's not meant to really confuse you, but just wanted to point out that the orange bar is the minimum 6-foot wide concrete walkway. So that you can see is continuous throughout both sides, the entire length of the thoroughfare, and in fact, turning around Harding Street. But beyond that, that's just the minimum. We have a wider condition basically in all conditions. So where you see the pink, that's actually effectively widened sidewalk width larger than the 6 feet. So because of the recess in the buildings and things like that, that 6-foot width actually expands to things like 15 to 23 feet wide, or in some cases, the existing condition of 101 South, it's an additional 2 feet. So that would give an 8-foot wide concrete sidewalk. And again, in the conditions of the proposed buildings on the north side, we don't really know what that would be because we haven't designed the buildings yet, but we know that there'll be at least a 2-foot addition to that 6-foot wide width. And in most cases, it'll be, larger than that. We also obviously have the adjacency to the civic spaces shown in green. So that's expanded walking space that will be in the form of different types of hardscapes. So that's something that I think is important to note. And then the last thing that we just wanted to touch on has to do with the land transfer. I know there was language in the agreement about how that all comes into play and the conditions for that. We just wanted to reiterate that transferring of the public way happens at the conclusion of the 3rd and final phase of the project. So there wouldn't be sort of a piecemeal transferring of the thoroughfare based on phasing. It would be the entire completion of that. So again, this diagram here shows phases 1, 2, and 3 in totality. And when those are built, that's when that land would be transferred to the city as a public way, or Archibald Query Way.
Ian, this is Rola speaking again. If I can just hop in right here. Just want to say we are okay with the revised conditions that the city has in there. So they suggest all phase 2 conditions of the master plan special permit dated January 20 must be completed prior to acceptance of this thoroughfare as a public way. So we're okay with that. Just wanted to bring that up here in diagram again, just to show that'll be these 2 phase 1, phase 2 as highlighted in Ian's plan there. So we're okay with that language. Just wanted to clarify that part. And then Ian, I think you had a slide at the back of the deck that talks about tree protection. And one of the the other conditions that staff recommends is that the applicant develop a tree protection plan that details protection of existing and newly planted trees. So I think, again, obviously that is okay with us as well. And Ian has a slide here that kind of talks to some of the strategies that we would be looking at. Of course, we do some further collaboration with PSOF on that prior to applying for the streetscape construction permit. So Ian, I'll let you talk to this slide.
Sure, thanks. So, obviously when a tree is installed as part of a phase and then that becomes an existing condition for the subsequent phases, our contract documents would have provisions in there that show which trees are to be preserved and how that preservation should be handled in terms of the fencing and the boxing out of the trunks. That's all kind of standard practice for us. We also have project specifications that talk about the actual measures, the means and methods that the contractor can use to make sure that those trees are preserved. And one thing, I apologize, it's kind of hard to see here, but highlighted in green on the lower right is an excerpt of our project specifications, which actually list what we call the damages and the liabilities for trees that are harmed as part of the construction if they are called out to be preserved. So the contractor is immediately aware upon receipt of the contract documents that if the trees designated to be removed, rather to be protected, are in any way harmed or damaged, then there is penalties that are assessed based on the size of that tree. So it's a very real and enforceable action that we have to ensure that those trees are protected. And if for any reason they are damaged, then there's sort of payment for that. And I believe that was our last open item.
Ian and Roland, thank you very much for the presentation. I think it addresses a lot of what, or everything that we had discussed previously. Does anybody on the board have any comments or questions of the applicant or of staff on these? Yes, Debbie.
Thank you to the applicant, and I'm impressed to see that tree language in your contract. I blew it up on my screen. That was great to see. I think this is actually a question more for the staff, but I understand that the thoroughfare will be deeded to Somerville, so I presume that means the city would then have jurisdiction to set that 10-mile-per-hour speed limit?
Mr. Chair,
I
this
just
is
wanna
Andrew Graminsky. I could speak to on that.
Go for it.
Yes, I can confirm that once the city has a jurisdiction. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes? Okay, great. Once the city has a jurisdiction over the thoroughfare, we can make those decisions related to speed limit. So you are correct.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions for the applicant or of staff on issues raised this evening on the supplemental staff memorandum? Okay. That's fantastic. Give me a sec. Okay. So seeing no further discussion on this agenda item, following public testimony, review of the submitted materials, and deliberation of the required considerations outlined by the zoning ordinance, I move to approve with conditions laid out in the original and supplemental staff memoranda, the site plan approval to develop a commercial shared street thoroughfare type in the high-rise zoning district. Seconded by Aaron. Roll call vote. The chair votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Aaron votes aye.
Debbie votes aye.
Excellent. We have a unanimous vote. Congratulations and good luck. I would like
Thank
to
you very
bring
much.
up-
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. The next project, which is Harding Street. We also have another supplemental staff memorandum on that. I don't know if you need.
So this is Rola speaking. Raisa, if you can please unmute David Nagahiro. He'll be giving us a short slideshow as well.
This is Raisa speaking. David Nagahiro, you have been unmuted.
Muted. Thank you. And can you also see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay.
This is Raisa speaking. You should be able to share your screen now.
Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we see your screen.
Great. Thank you. Good evening. I'm David Nagahiro from CBT. And just to start, we'll take a look at a recap just by way of orientation. We're looking at 99 South of the B3 building in relationship to B1 101 South and 808 B2, which is along the thoroughfare that Ian just presented. The ground floor plan this is reorienting to the south on South Street on the left-hand side. Thoroughfare 1 continues down on your right-hand side, and both have this large setbacks on both sides. Earl Street to the top of the page, and then Harding at the bottom. You can see that the blue and the retail and the spaces wrapping around the perimeter, really trying to maximize the edge. One of the things we'll be talking about tonight is the bike storage along Thoroughfare 1. This is just another massing looking from the south along South Street, the corner of South Street and Harding. Again, looking at warm materials, the terracotta, the zipper, really creating that transition, the 4-story transition to the back of the site. And then pulling a little bit more closely, this is the intersection of South, the bottom image that you see, South Street and Harding Street. Again, the large setback along this edge, the arcaded space along that, aligning with 101 as well. And then the scaling element that you see stepping up from the 4 stories to the 6 stories as you move from the south to the north. What we heard last time, a number of bicycle parking spaces, and it was really looking for 30 of the required long-term spaces on level 1. Looking at illustrating how to access the bike and the bike parking spaces, bicycle parking space, other examples in 101 and 808, and then illustrating the way the parking access and the loading accesses via Earl Street. We'll start with the bicycle parking. Just looking at the 99 South in the center of the page in pink, you see between Webster Street on the west side and Bedford on the right-hand side or the east side. Thoroughfare 1 providing the access into the site to the north. South Street providing along south, the southern edge of the building to the south. And then the pink line shows the future connection of South Street or the realignment to South Street. So the idea of coming in from Union Square and then coming in from Medford Street along South Street from the east side. As we pull in closer to the site, again, with the South Street on the left-hand side, Thoroughfare 1 on the right-hand side, you see the larger blue line, which is the kind of the bicycle movement coming into the site. Also coming into the site along Thoroughfare from the Union Square side, using the streets, Earl Street and Harding to access the building as well. On the left-hand side, we have the bicycle elevator that brings you down to the bicycle parking in the P1 level. So you come off of the streets, South Street, you walk your bike into the arcaded space and then into the elevator that takes you down to the lower level. On the right-hand side to the north, this is along Thoroughfare 1, being able to walk your bike. And we were looking at, and this is where we're asked to provide a bicycle parking at grade along the thoroughfare. And then the opportunity of pedestrian access, not only from Thoroughfare, but also from South Street as well, coming into the bicycle lobby as well. As you continue down from the elevator, the 2 elevators here bring you down to the bicycle lobby and bring you directly into the bicycle storage room. We have locker rooms, changing rooms as well in this level. And this is just a kind of axonometric 3-dimensional diagram. The one on the upper part of the page shows the coming off of South Street, walking your bike into the plaza, into the arcade, and into the elevator, bringing you down in the dashed lines, the green and the orange down to the P1 level that brings you into the bicycle room. And then along Thoroughfare 1, also having the opportunity, so bikes coming from the west, coming along Thoroughfare, could also have access to the bicycle at grade. And then as we pull in a little bit more closely, the one on the left-hand side is the at grade parking along thoroughfare. The idea of having 30% of the required long-term parking spaces, or 22 spaces, located along this edge. The one along the P1 where you're taking the elevator off of South Street down to the P1 level and into the parking. We are required 71 spaces. We've actually provided 95 spaces. And if we were to add in the 22 from the level 1, there would be 117 bicycle parking spaces. This is just showing a couple of other examples that DLJ and Leggett are doing at 101 South, and this is the coming in at the 0.5 level or half level down to coming into the bicycle room along that edge. And then looking at 808, which is actually putting it, providing it at grade. I think the difference between 101 and 99 compared to 808 is that there's a much larger ground floor plan that affords the opportunity of providing the bicycle room at grade. Access and parking loading via Earl Street. Looking at kind of zooming back out again. Again, 99 South is the pink in the middle. From Medford Street and Webster Street from the east and west, coming in along thoroughfare alignment and then coming along South Street. So really the alignment of the car coming into South Street, being able to access not only the service dock, but also the parking access off of Earl Street. As we zoom in a little bit more closely, again, you see between along South Street, the ability to turn into Earl Street, which is really consolidating the loading and the parking along Earl Street. So having access to the vehicular parking as well as the loading docks. I think that was the last slide for the discussion.
Yep. David, as you know, the main issue was last time location of the at grade bike parking.
That's right.
And that was the concern of staff and certain members of the board. And staff has made in a supplemental memorandum a suggested condition, which I like, which allows us to move forward on this project as is and defer to staff the most appropriate location while working with your team on where that should be.
Mr. Chair, this is Rola speaking. So speaking to the supplemental staff memo, I believe the permit condition is okay on our side. They've added the language that says final design must be reviewed and approved by city departments prior to applying for a building permit. I think we're okay with that. We were only hesitant to change that potential bike parking at grade to South Street only because we view South Street as a future primary frontage and we'd like to maximize retail there. But given that, you know, it's a design that's still developing, I think if we leave that as something that we can review with the city and work with them on, then I think we're okay with the language in that condition.
Rolla, basically, I don't want to hold up your project to find out where we're going to put bike parking.
No, we agree.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm trying to help move you along in a way that's going to be, you know, kind of respectful of, you know, your needs to move forward with your project and our needs to make sure that the bike parking is at the most appropriate location.
Absolutely, we really appreciate it.
Those are my comments. I kind of praised this project and this application the last time you guys came around. I think this is a great idea. It's a great looking building. I'm looking forward to moving forward on this evening. Does anybody else on the board have any comments or questions of the applicant or of staff? Yeah, Aaron.
Thanks, Chair. Maybe just a comment on the supplemental staff memo with the basically leave the bike parking location up to sort of the experts as we're developing. I agree with that as well. I would also like to sort of highlight that I liked the addition of if the parking garage ramp angle or pitch supports it. and is not sufficiently, it's not too steep, basically, that it leaves open the option for, applicant and staff to discuss a half-grade parking or moving it down and prioritizing both sides of the building for retail. So I liked that. I sort of liked the whole piece and just wanted to highlight that, as you guys are discussing this with staff and everyone agrees that the ramp makes sense. As a biker, I wouldn't mind going down to the parking lot as long as the ramp's not a death trap.
Awesome. Does anybody have any other comments or questions that they'd like to make at this point? Okay. Seeing none. Following public testimony, review of the submitted materials and deliberation of the required considerations outlined by the zoning ordinance, I move to approve with conditions both in the original and supplemental staff memoranda, the site plan approval, developing 12-story LEED Platinum building in the high-rise zoning district. Seconded by Jahan. Chair votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Aaron votes aye.
Debbie votes aye.
Congratulations. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
With no other business before the planning board this evening, and our next meeting being on the 1st of December, the chair moves to adjourn in celebration of the long weekend. Seconded by Debbie. The chair votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Aaron votes aye.
Debbie votes aye.
Wonderful. Thank you all very much. Have a nice night.
Have a good night.
Thank you so much.
Night. Thanks all.